I got the job through a friend of a friend. Ohio University had been looking for a night security guard to patrol the west side of campus, specifically the older buildings near College Green. The pay was decent, quiet shifts, nothing too intense, perfect for someone like me who preferred silence over chaos. At least, that's what they said. My first night started with a short orientation by a man named Gerald. He was about 60, with a voice like gravel and skin the color of old paper. He didn't look at me when he spoke, and he didn't smile, not even once. "This is a good gig," he muttered, handing me a flashlight, a laminated map, and a printed sheet. "You keep quiet. Follow the patrol schedule. Lock up when you're supposed to. And," he paused here, his pale eyes finally meeting mine, "stick to the rules." That's when he handed me a second sheet, one typed in courier font, yellowed at the edges, and clearly not official. It had no university logo, no signature, no header. Just a title in bold: Night Security Post, Special Instructions. And underneath, 1, begin rounds at exactly 11 p.m., not a minute before, not a minute after. 2, never enter Ellis Hall after 12:45 a.m., even if you hear voices, especially if you hear voices. 3, if you see the girl in the yellow dress near Cutler Hall, do not approach her. Turn your back and keep walking. 4, between 2:13 and 2:27 a.m., avoid all reflective surfaces. 5, if the bell tower rings more than once after 3 a.m., go to the nearest basement and wait. 6, do not speak to anyone who looks like a student after 3:33 a.m. They are not students. 7, leave campus by 4 a.m. sharp. If something tries to stop you, run. At first, I thought it was a joke. You know, initiation hazing. Maybe Gerald was screwing with me, or some bored students made this up and passed it around to mess with new guards. "You serious with this?" I asked, half laughing. Gerald didn't laugh. He just stared at me and said, "Stick to the rules." 10:55 p.m., I sat inside the small guard booth near University Terrace, sipping lukewarm coffee and watching the campus slowly fall into that eerie silence only large buildings can produce at night. The clock on the wall ticked louder than necessary. With every passing second, something in my stomach tightened. I watched as the hands reached 11 p.m., and I sighed, grabbing my flashlight and laminated map. Let's see what we got. My patrol route was simple. Starting near the library, looping through College Green, swinging by the science annex, and ending behind Ellis Hall. Easy enough. The first round was uneventful. Just me and the sound of my boots on stone walkways, the occasional rustle of leaves, or a squirrel darting out from a trash can. I kept glancing at the rule sheet, folded in my back pocket. No signs of any girls in yellow dresses, no voices, nothing weird, until I passed Cutler Hall on my second round. That's when I heard the laughter. It wasn't loud, but it was sharp, like it was meant to be heard, even across distance. It came from near the old oak trees between Cutler and the ROTC building. I froze in place, flashlight hovering. Laughter again, high-pitched, childlike. And then I saw her. She was standing beneath one of the trees, thin, pale, dressed in a bright yellow sundress. Her face was shadowed, her dark hair falling in straight strands over her shoulders. She didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. I remembered the rule. If you see the girl in the yellow dress near Cutler Hall, do not approach her. Turn your back and keep walking. My heart thudded. This wasn't a prank. No student could stand that still in the cold night. No one could laugh like that and not sound human. And she didn't blink. Her head tilted just a little, like she was waiting for me to react. I turned my back. My every instinct screamed to run, but I didn't. I walked, slowly, deliberately, past Cutler, past the old cannon, toward Ellis Hall. When I looked back, she was gone. 1244 Ellis Hall loomed ahead of me, half covered in ivy, its windows reflecting faint moonlight. The rule came back to me instantly. Never enter Ellis Hall after 12:45 a.m., even if you hear voices, especially if you hear voices. I pulled out my map. My route ended here before doubling back to the science annex. I just had to check the rear doors, make sure they were locked, then move on. The moment I approached the back steps, I heard it, a voice, soft, muffled. "Help?" I froze. "Anyone, please." It was coming from inside, from behind the heavy wooden door. I stepped closer, putting my ear to the cool surface. "Please, I can't breathe." It sounded like a girl, young, scared. I felt something cold grip my spine. I reached for the handle, then stopped. Even if you hear voices, especially if you hear voices, I stepped back. The voice turned into something else, a garbled noise like someone laughing underwater, a wet, distorted sound that gurgled and bubbled. I didn't wait to hear more. I backed away from the door, my flashlight trembling in my hand, and walked straight toward the science annex. 1 a.m. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. I didn't see the girl again. I didn't hear more voices, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. That night, I returned to the booth just before 4 a.m. I sat there staring at the laminated map and the list of rules. Gerald hadn't lied. He hadn't been joking. These were not suggestions. These were survival instructions, and I had followed them, but barely. The next night, I returned. I could have quit, but something about the mystery, about the rules, drew me in. I needed answers. What was Ellis Hall hiding? Who was the girl in yellow? And why the hell did the bell tower ring 4 times last night when it was only supposed to chime at midnight? I had a feeling I wouldn't like the answers, but I had to know. I came back the next night. I told myself I was doing it for the paycheck, for the routine, for the stability I hadn't had in years. But deep down, I knew the truth. It was the rules, the strange ones, the ones that made no damn sense but somehow kept me alive last night. And now I needed to know why. I arrived at the booth a little earlier than usual, hoping to catch Gerald again, but the place was empty. Only a note pinned to the bulletin board in that same typewriter font. Open quote, "If the girl follows you, do not let her see your reflection." Close quote. That wasn't on the original rule sheet. I ran my fingers over the paper. No signature, no date. But someone had added it, and that meant someone knew I'd seen her. The girl in the yellow dress. I sat there, coffee untouched, thinking back to last night, her figure under the tree, the way she watched me, the childlike laughter that didn't belong in this world. I reached into my backpack and pulled out something new I'd brought with me, a small pocket mirror. If she was going to follow me, I wanted to see what happened when she met her own reflection. 11 p.m. The shift began. The flashlight clicked on, casting the same dim circle of safety ahead of me. My boots tapped across familiar stone paths, but the air felt different tonight, heavier, charged. As I moved past the library and toward Cutler Hall, I found myself slowing down. Half of me wanted to see her again. The other half was screaming that was the stupidest possible thing to want. But she wasn't there. Not by the trees, not under the arch, not even by the old cannon. Nothing. Just stillness. And then Ellis Hall. I knew what the rules said. Never enter Ellis Hall after 12:45 a.m. But I hadn't forgotten the voice from the night before. The gurgling cries, the sound of something pretending to be human. And something told me, if I wanted answers, they were inside that building. So at 12:42 a.m., with only 3 minutes to spare, I slipped inside Ellis Hall. The air inside was cold, not chilly, freezing. My breath puffed visibly. The halls were completely dark, except for the red exit signs glowing at either end. It smelled like mold, wet wood, and something faintly metallic. The place was mostly old classrooms, locked office doors, and a massive archive room in the basement. According to the map Gerald gave me, it hadn't been in use for years. The university stored decades of forgotten records down there. Old files, abandoned research, dust-covered cabinets. And something else. I reached the top of the basement stairs. The light switch didn't work. Of course it didn't. I took one step, then another, and descended into the black. 12:44 a.m. My flashlight flickered. A long, narrow hallway stretched before me, lined with shelves. Paper rustled somewhere deeper in the dark, though there was no breeze. Then I saw her. She stood at the far end of the archive hall, partially hidden behind a metal filing cabinet. The yellow dress was unmistakable. Only now it was stained. Splotches of something dark covered the hem. Her hair hung limp. Her feet were bare, and in her left hand she held something, long and thin. I couldn't tell if it was a stick or a bone. She turned her head slowly and looked at me. This time I saw her face clearly. She had no eyes, just 2 hollow sockets, black and dripping. I fumbled for the mirror in my pocket and lifted it up with a shaking hand. The moment her reflection appeared in the glass, she shrieked. A horrible, piercing sound that cracked through the silence like broken glass. She fell to her knees, clutching her face, as the air around us shifted. It felt like gravity flipped sideways. I dropped the mirror. It shattered. I ran. I exploded out of the archive room, up the stairs two at a time. The building groaned behind me, like something huge had woken up inside its walls. The moment I burst through the front doors and into the cold night air, everything went silent again. No shrieking, no groaning, nothing. Ellis Hall just stood there, watching. I sat behind the ROTC building, breathing hard, the broken mirror still clutched in my hand. I didn't know what she was. A ghost? A demon? A fragment of something ancient tied to this university? But I knew one thing now. The reflection rule was real. Someone had updated the list because someone else had probably died breaking that rule. And now I knew what would have happened if I stayed in that building past 12:45. 2:13 a.m. my radio crackled. Unit 4, come in. It was the dispatch lady, soft-spoken, always polite. I answered with a shaky voice. Yeah, I'm here. There's movement near the fountain by the old science building, she said. Can you check it out? I looked at my watch. 2:13 a.m. Another rule surfaced in my mind. Between 2:13 and 2:27 a.m., avoid all reflective surfaces. The fountain, full of water, full of reflections. I swallowed. Can't dispatch someone else? I'm dealing with a code yellow over by. Crackling static cut me off. Then silence. No response. I was alone again. I didn't go to the fountain. I found a bench facing away from it and waited out the 14 minutes, gripping the flashlight like a weapon. At 2:27, I heard it. Splash. Then footsteps. Wet, dragging footsteps that echoed far louder than they should have. I didn't dare look. Not at the water. Not at the sound. Not even when the air grew damp around me, and something cold brushed the back of my neck like fingers made of mist. When the sounds faded, I stood and turned slowly. The path was empty, but there were footprints, soaking wet footprints, leading away from the fountain, then vanishing completely halfway down the path. 3 a.m. I heard the bell tower ring. Once. I held my breath. Then it rang again and again, 3 times. I remembered the rule. If the bell tower rings more than once after 3 a.m., go to the nearest basement and wait. I was near the ROTC building. Its basement was small, but it had a storm door entrance near the back. I ran to it, flung it open, and slipped inside just as a howl echoed across campus. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like metal screaming. I stayed in the ROTC basement for nearly 40 minutes, huddled between rusted chairs and broken tables, the flashlight slowly dying. Only when the silence returned and my watch read 3:45 a.m. did I dare step outside. 4 a.m. I was out of there by 3:59, keys jangling, heart pounding. The campus was still, almost peaceful again, but I knew what I saw, and I knew I was being watched by things that didn't belong in this world anymore, if they ever did. I returned to the booth. There was another note waiting for me, freshly pinned to the bulletin board. Same courier font, same typewriter ink. Open quote, you looked into the archive. That was brave or foolish. If she screams again, run north, always north. They're starting to notice you. Close quote. And at the bottom, scribbled in black pen, don't break rule number 6. To be continued in part 3. Part 3, whispers from the bell tower. They're starting to notice me. That's what the new note said. The one pinned inside the security booth. Same old courier font, same creepy undertone. But this time, it didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a countdown. Ever since I broke rule number 2 by going into Ellis Hall and used a mirror on the girl in the yellow dress, things haven't been the same. The air feels different, like it hums around me, like something's breathing in sync with my steps. But I'm still here, because now I have to know. 10:55 p.m. night 3. A new detail caught my eye the moment I arrived, the bell tower. The old clock sat still at 10, even though my phone said 10:55. Its cracked face loomed over the west quad like a broken eye, staring down at campus. I never thought much about the bell tower before, but now I couldn't stop glancing at it. 3 chimes last night. The rule was clear. If the bell tower rings more than once after 3 a.m., go to the nearest basement and wait. But what if I went inside the tower before it struck? What if I found out why it rings? 11 p.m. patrol start. I kept to the route for the first round. Cutler Hall, the ROTC building, College Green, No yellow dress tonight. Not yet. But the silence felt heavy, like the campus was holding its breath. Even the trees didn't move. There was no wind. Just me, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots, and the distant tick of a broken clock. When I reached the shadow of the bell tower, I looked up, and for the first time I noticed the door at its base, old, rusted, and bolted shut. Except tonight, it was open. Just a crack. 1:11 a.m. Bell Tower Base. I knew this wasn't part of the patrol route. I knew I wasn't supposed to veer off. But ever since I saw that girl in the archive, ever since the rules started updating themselves, it's like the job itself has shifted. Like I'm not guarding the university, I'm guarding something else. I pushed the bell tower door open. The hinges screamed. Inside, a narrow spiral staircase wound up into blackness. The air smelled like dust, burnt metal, and something faintly rotten. My flashlight barely lit more than a few feet ahead. But I started climbing, step after step, higher, and with every turn the air got colder. 1:21 a.m., mid-tower. That's when the whispers began. At first they were barely audible, just static under the sound of my breathing. But soon they formed words. Open quote, "You shouldn't be here. It sees you now. The rules keep you safe when you follow them." Close quote. I stopped, my back against the cold stone wall. My flashlight flickered again. This damn thing always flickers at the worst times. Something moved just ahead. A shape, shadowy but not from the beam of my light. Something that absorbed the light instead of reflecting it. I took another step. The whispers stopped, and I heard a loud clang from the top of the tower, like a chain being dropped. 1:33 a.m. The bell. I reached the top. The bell room was massive. The ceiling arched high above the great iron bell. Chains hung from its mechanisms like vines in an abandoned cathedral. Dust floated thick in the air, disturbed by my breath and my fear. There was a figure standing beneath the bell, human-shaped, but wrong. It was tall, too tall. Its limbs were thin, with elbows that bent the wrong way like a puppet, and its head was wrapped in cloth, bandages stained with something black and pulsing. It didn't move, it didn't breathe, but it held the bell's rope in its hand. I didn't know what would happen if it rang the bell again, but I didn't want to find out. So I whispered, "Don't," and it turned to face me. Its head tilted slowly. The bandages shifted, as if something beneath was trying to escape, writhing, pressing against the cloth. Its body twitched once, like a broken machine struggling to activate. I stepped back. It let go of the rope. The bell didn't ring. Instead, it spoke, not through sound, but directly into my mind. Open quote, "You broke the silence. You brought her reflection. Now she sees herself in you." Close quote, and with that, it vanished. One blink and it was just gone. The air warmed. The chain stopped swaying. I ran back down the stairs 2 steps at a time, the whisper of something following me the whole way down. 2:05 a.m. Dispatch radio, Unit 4, come in. It was dispatch again. Same soft-spoken voice. I reached for the radio, still catching my breath. "I'm here." "You're not where you're supposed to be." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're not on the route, Mason. Why are you near the bell tower?" I didn't remember telling her my name, not once. "Who is this?" I asked. Silence. Then a new voice came over the radio. My voice. Open quote, "I'm just doing my rounds." Close quote. The hairs on my arm stood up. "No, what the hell is this?" Open quote, "I'm just doing my rounds," the voice repeated. Close quote. Then laughter, low, echoing, then nothing. The radio hissed and died in my hand. 2:13 a.m. Reflections returned, the fountain again, but I didn't go near it. Instead, I moved past the art building until I saw something in the window. Not mine. The girl in the yellow dress stood behind me, her empty eyes weeping thick, thick black tears, her mouth smiling too wide. But when I turned around, there was no one there. Only her reflection stayed. And she whispered something I could barely hear. Open quote, "You heard the bell, now you belong to time." Close quote. 3 a.m., the bell chimes once. I stood still. Once meant safety. Twice or more meant run. I checked my watch. 3:01. Nothing. But then, dong, dong, 3 more chimes. 4 total. I didn't wait. I ran to the nearest building, the psychology lab, and found the basement door. Locked. Come on. I heard something pounding in the distance, like a giant's footfall. The ground vibrated slightly with each impact. I slammed my shoulder into the door once, twice, until it flew open, and I rushed down into the dark. I stayed there, crouched among old desks and mannequin heads for what felt like hours. 356 note on the wall. There was a note waiting for me on the concrete wall. A new one. Not pinned, written in red. Open quote. She's inside you now. You saw the bell keeper. The final rule is coming. Do not read it out loud. Close quote. 4 a.m. escape. I made it to the booth again, barely. The lights inside flickered, and on the desk was the original rule sheet, with one new line added at the bottom. 8. Do not answer the knock on the glass after 4:10 a.m. It won't be your reflection. That night, I didn't sleep, and for the first time in years I was afraid to look in the mirror. Because when I did, briefly, I saw her behind me, smiling, waiting. They say every place has secrets, but Ohio University, it breeds them. I used to think the rules were weird superstitions, warnings passed down from paranoid guards, but now I know better. These rules are barriers, thin walls that keep the horrors from crawling into our world completely. But last night, something got through. 9:50 p.m., my apartment. I didn't want to return. Not after hearing the bell tower voice in my head. Not after seeing her reflection instead of mine. Not after reading that newest rule, open quote 8. Do not answer the knock on the glass after 4:10 a.m. It won't be your reflection. Close quote. It had been haunting me all day. What happens if I answer? I almost called off the shift, almost quit, but I didn't, because I know if I leave now, I'll never be free. That girl in yellow will follow me home. The bell tower will find my dreams. I'm tied to the rules now. The only way out is through. 10:58 p.m. security booth. The air was still, the lights flickering, and a new note lay on my desk. Not a typed one this time. Handwritten, shaky, open quote. You're almost out of time. She wants your name. If she learns it, don't speak, don't breathe, don't move. She only knocks once, close quote. And below that, smeared in what I pray was ink, open quote, don't say your name aloud, not even once. Close quote. I swallowed hard. There was something ancient about these warnings, like they weren't written for me alone, but for every guard who ever broke the rules. I checked my watch. 11 p.m. Time to begin. 12:50 a.m. Cutler Hall. Still no sign of the girl, but her presence lingered. The trees creaked above me as I passed under them. Leaves rustled in ways that didn't match the wind. Lights flickered off before I reached them. My radio crackled with silence, static with a heartbeat beneath it. And then something new. My phone buzzed. One notification. Open quote. Unknown. Mason, she's at the glass. Close quote. I froze. How the hell did they know my name? I looked around. No one. Then the message disappeared. Erased. Gone from the log like it never existed. But something was watching. I could feel it behind my eyes. 1:45 a.m. I didn't go in. Not again. Instead, I passed by it quickly. But even that was a mistake. Because the windows were wrong. Every one of them showed something different. One had snow falling behind the glass. Another showed a reflection of me inside a burning hallway. A third had her, standing in the dark, pressing her hand against the inside of the glass, mouthing my name. And though I couldn't hear her, I knew she was saying it. 2:13 a.m., fountain, again. Still avoided reflections, but tonight they didn't avoid me. The puddles on the path showed me walking with her beside me. The windows flickered my face into hers. Even the dark glass of my watch flashed a smile that wasn't mine. The rules said don't look, but tonight it didn't matter if I did, because the reflections had started to look at me. The rule I dreaded. Rule number 6, open quote. Do not speak to anyone who looks like a student after 3:33 a.m. They are not students' quotes. At exactly 3:33, I saw them. A group of 4, wearing backpacks, laughing. One waved at me. They were standing near the East Quad, just beneath the shadow of the old dorm. I could tell immediately. Something was off. Their mouths laughed, but no sound came out. Their footsteps didn't match the ground. And their eyes, oh God, their eyes were hollow. Not metaphorically, literally, like someone scooped out their souls and left only the smile behind. Hey man, one said, what time is it? I didn't answer. I didn't stop. But they followed me, step for step, until I crossed the chapel gate, and they vanished. 4:09 a.m., the booth, I returned to the booth. The sky was still black, but dawn was close. The air felt heavier than ever. My fingers trembled as I sipped the last of my coffee, eyes locked on the glass window in front of me. 410 was coming. I'd already locked the booth door, radio off, lights dimmed, phone powered down, but deep inside I knew nothing would stop it. 4:10 a.m., the moment ticked by. Nothing. Then, knock. Just once, light, hollow, from the glass behind me, not the front window, the small glass panel on the back door. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even blink. Knock. Again, though the rule said only once, this time louder. My flashlight flickered, then turned off. Then I heard my name. Open quote, Masun, close quote. A whisper, faint, but it came from inside the booth. I turned slowly, heart in my throat. No one there, but the reflection on the glass. It wasn't mine, it was hers. She was smiling, bloody teeth, hollow eyes. She pressed her hand to the glass, and so did I, not intentionally. My body moved without me, like it belonged to her now. 4:11 a.m. I remembered the note. Open quote, if she learns your name, don't move, don't breathe, don't speak. Close quote, she said my name, but how the phone, the radio, the notes. I'd been saying my name in my head all shift, reading it aloud in whispers, thinking it, and maybe that was enough. She pressed her forehead to the glass and whispered, open quote, one more night. That's all I need, let me in. Close quote. Then the glass cracked. I stumbled backward, broke the trance, and fell to the floor. By the time I stood up, the reflection was gone, but the crack in the window remained, and it looked exactly like a handprint. 4:15 a.m., final note. One more note waited for me before I clocked out. Sitting on my chair, folded once, no typewriter this time, just handwriting that barely stayed within the lines. Open quote, she'll come through the crack next time. You have one shift left. The rules will change again. Only one way to stop her, break the cycle, destroy the rule that made her. Close quote. At the bottom of the note was a single word, smudged by a tear or blood. Open quote, basement. Close quote. She's coming, and the rules aren't enough anymore. Tomorrow night I'll go where it all began, even if it kills me, because if I don't, she'll walk out of the glass and wear my face next. This is my final entry. One last shift, one last night, one last chance to stop her before she stops me, because now I know what the rules are really for. They don't just protect us from the things hiding in the dark. They protect the things from each other. They keep her locked behind the glass, but the crack is spreading, and time is out. 10:48 p.m., my apartment. I packed everything I'd need. Flashlight, 2 extra batteries, a hammer, a crowbar, salt, a mirror, and a worn, yellowed envelope I found buried inside the back of the security desk drawer this morning. The envelope was labeled, open quote, final protocol, do not open unless the cycle begins again, close quote. Inside, one sentence was written in red ink, open quote, the rule that made her is hidden in the basement, close quote. I didn't know what that meant, but I intended to find out. Tonight, I wasn't following the rules. I was breaking them. 11 p.m. security booth. The air was stifling. The lights dimmed even when I flipped them to max. There was no radio static, no dispatch, no sound. The final note was already waiting for me on the desk. Typed, centered, cold, open quote, you've already seen your reflection in her. The bellkeeper knows your name. She will knock tonight. Do not be in the booth when she does. If you make it to the basement, you must destroy the first rule. Close 11:38 p.m., walking toward Ellis Hall. The university was dead silent. Even the wind didn't breathe. As I passed Cutler Hall, I felt her watching me again. From the trees, from the windows, from the reflections in every surface. I didn't turn to look. Not this time. This time, I went straight to Ellis Hall, the cursed building, the one I had only entered before 12:45. But now, I was going in after. 12:48 a.m., entering Ellis Hall again. Rule number 2 said, open quote, never enter Ellis Hall after 12:45 a.m., even if you hear voices, especially if you hear voices, close quote. But I wasn't hearing voices. I was hearing my own name, echoed down the hallway by something that used my voice like a recording on a broken loop. Open quote. Mason, 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 close quote. I descended into the basement, past the archive, past the locked storerooms, down a spiral stairwell I swear wasn't there before. The walls were wrong, too narrow, made of rough stone instead of brick. The air got colder, thicker, until I reached a door made of iron with a mirror hanging on the front. My reflection wasn't mine, it was hers. 1:02 a.m., the door opens. The mirror didn't show me at all anymore, just her face. Blank, wet with black tears, smiling wider than anything human. She raised her hand in the mirror, and behind me, the door unlocked itself. Inside was a room filled with paper, hundreds, thousands of type, all pinned to the walls, floors, and ceiling. Every one of them was a rule. Open quote, don't walk the music hall at night. Don't feed the thing in the third floor closet. Don't knock twice on room 212. Don't speak your name after 333. Don't look in the bell when it's turning. Don't read the rules aloud, close quote, but one stood out, pinned to a rusted filing cabinet, faded, ripped, but readable. The first rule ever written, open quote, if she asks for her name, don't answer. If she doesn't remember it, never remind her, close quote. I stared at it, and it all clicked. She's not a ghost, not fully. She was born from the rules themselves, from people trying to forget her, to erase her. And in doing so, they made her stronger. This rule, this forgotten, buried piece of red ink on paper was the seed. If I destroyed it, maybe I could end this. 1:10 a.m., fire in the basement. I doused the paper in lighter fluid, lit a match. The moment the flame touched the rule, the entire room screamed. The floor trembled. The papers fluttered violently, lifting like birds trying to escape. The mirror shattered, and her face screamed with it, cracking down the middle like porcelain. Then the fire stopped. Silence. Everything went cold again. The rules turned to ash, and I was left standing in the dark. Campus. I came back up to the surface. Everything was quiet. The wind blew again. The lights stayed on. Even the fountain reflected only me. 3:33 a.m. Cutler Hall. I stood near the same trees where I first saw her. Nothing. No voices. No shadow students. No yellow dress. Just the breeze through the leaves. And for the first time in 3 nights, I felt free. 4 a.m. security booth. I sat down. The booth was still. The glass still cracked, but nothing stood behind it. No whispers. No knock. No handprint. 4:10 a.m. came and passed. 4:15 a.m. final note. One last note on the desk. Handwritten, clear, calm. Open quote. You broke the cycle, but others will come, and the rules will return. Be ready to write new ones. For what lies below is never gone, only waiting. Welcome, Warden. Close quote. Epilogue. 1 week later, they promoted me. Didn't even ask. Gerald disappeared. No goodbye. No forwarding number. Now I sit behind the desk. Now I write the rule sheets. A new one waits for the next poor soul who thinks this job is just quiet walks and coffee. It says, open quote 1, begin your rounds at exactly 11 p.m. Not a minute before, not a minute after. 2, never enter Ellis Hall after 12:45 a.m. Close quote. And at the very bottom, handwritten in black ink, open quote, do not ask what happened to the last guard. Close quote, because she's still here, somewhere, waiting. The end.